printed notes that I have. Well, let's get started because I want to have time for us to go through this and then prepare so that you're ready to prepare to talk to the girls. And hopefully, Adam will be listening in, and so he will get a bit of this. But part of this is also um, giving you the ability to use everything that we're going to be learning about so that as you begin thinking about ministry and what that looks like in your life, because ministry is the helps that you do all along the way, whether it's got a formal title or not. That part of this is making sure that the tools we use are tools that work well for you. Um, Part of the dissonance, the difference between what you believe and what you're actually able to do, I have found oftentimes it's our healing. It's the things that we do that really are about prioritizing, soothing the fears and the guilt and the insecurity in the process. And so we start with this as a foundation. Um, let's go back to the beginning of incidents in our life. And as we begin to think through them, oftentimes, if you hear the word trauma, it's become a buzzword. And oftentimes, people mean all kind of different things by it, but usually something that's happened that's a negative situation in life. And some of the research that Jesse Collins began to do, one, he realized we got to do a better job of helping people fix it. So it doesn't matter how it happens, once it happens. And he was dealing with people in the military. He was dealing with people that were involved in various aspects of terrorism. So really, really bad stuff. And this is the first thing we have to really look at, or one of the things that he looked at in trying to understand how does trauma work? How does it happen? If we're trying to fix it, how do we undo that? Was he began to study trauma. And he began to realize that trauma wasn't quite as we describe it. Even now, if you talk to people in many fields, but especially mental health, trauma is about this list of things. If these things have happened, this is trauma in your life. And it allows us to be able to say, well, these people have PTSD, but these people don't. As I've begun to work with Jesse Collins' work on healing, because healing people is how we fix what's wrong in society, because it's us doing it. He began to realize that trauma isn't just the big stuff, but trauma is the small stuff too. And as he began to really observe, he realized that if we're trying to find the ground zero, where does trauma start? Where is it birthed? What's the Big Bang? He began to realize that it happens every single time there's a confliction in our values. Now, it doesn't matter what your values are. Your values can be crappy. Anytime that value is conflicted, that's a point of trauma. That's our ground zero. As I've looked at this work, and I've been involved in this work for been about 12 years since I was introduced to the healing piece of the tools that you'll learn, because we'll be talking about community and lots of aspects of community in the next months together. But the healing piece was the piece that, if that doesn't get fixed, nothing else gets fixed real good. We can do behavior modification, but how long does that work? It's like Adam trying to do behavior modification and make her do something that she was determined not to do. Just creates chaos for everybody. Everybody gets everybody gets traumatized in the process. But as we began to look at that, it was, wait a minute, maybe we're defining trauma wrong. If this happens in big and small ways, anytime your values are conflicted in one way or another, whether you're doing it or somebody's doing it to you, it doesn't matter how it happens, it happens. And then we look around at people. Part of what I began to realize was we have a 100% trauma rate. Who has not been impacted by that? If that's the case, we got a problem. Because if everybody got it, do we have enough fixes for everybody? And do our fixes need to be fixes so that everybody has access to the solution? And that still isn't popular in society. But what if our churches had solutions like that too? And so as I began to really look at that, it was, can we do it any other way? Can we fix society without fixing people? And it was no. But if it happens where our values are conflicted, can we find a way to undo it? And part of this process is 50 years of work to say, yeah, we can. We can begin to heal. Because what happens is when values get conflicted, it twists us. If this is how you treated me and you told me this is love, I'm confused. It didn't feel like love. But this is supposed, so now my sense of what love is now warped because of my experiences. I'm not thinking properly, because if this is what I think love is, I get into relationships and they treat me how I think love is, but that doesn't feel good to me. Something about this doesn't feel loving. So now I'm confused. I've got some more turmoil, and it warps the very thinking process. Because if this is what I think love is now, I can't think about this is the way I think it is, even if they want it to get better. How do you develop a framework that's based on something else? And part of that is behavior modification. And the way this process works, if there's uncomfortable emotions and you know that you responding to them in your unhealthy ways makes you more unhealthy, but you don't yet have the ability to think through it in other ways, what do? And that's where I began to really see the benefit of this process. Because if I know, and let me back up, because the other piece of trauma that I realize is that when we experience trauma, big and small ways, and it's cumulative, all of the things that have happened that spiral to today, that when we look at how trauma operates, it works just like addiction. The only problem is with trauma, there's a whole slew of drugs of choice that we can participate in that are legal, because it's our behaviors. What are the things that we do to cover up the feelings that we want to avoid? The fear, guilt, and insecurity. How do we make them more manageable in our life? We do things that make us feel less fearful, less insecure, less guilty. And then those behaviors get practiced. If it worked this time, next time I'm feeling these things, I'll do the same thing. And before you know it, you've created a new habit. The problem is the habit oftentimes has been created. She's like, I'm not moving. Do you need something? I'm just going to be right here. Oftentimes the habits are the very things that also violate our values. And as I began to understand, so anytime my values are violated, regardless of who does it, trauma is created. But if I'm the one doing these things that violate my values, I'm the one creating trauma in my own life. Wait a minute. There's one person out of anybody else in the world that I've got control over, and that's me. But it's like addiction. What would you tell to someone who's addicted to a substance? They're in the midst of seeking their fix, and you're going to try to talk logic to them? How's that going to work?
All they're thinking about is their fix.
All they're thinking about is their fix. But they love you. Why would they steal from you? What wins out?
The fix.
Need for the fix. So I began looking at trauma through the eyes of addiction. Wait a minute. So if we've all experienced it, you mean we all have drugs of choice that we go to? Our behaviors. And sometimes we layer substances and other things on top of that, but our behaviors become the drugs of choice. And something happens, And then what do? I reach for that behavior that I know works in some way, but is it really working, serving the purpose that I want it to? Soothe whatever it is that's making me feel uncomfortable. If it's stuff I don't want to think about, soothe. I'll do something so that I can avoid thinking about this. Or I don't want to feel powerless. It's an insecurity issue or a fear issue. I fear not being in control. What would the behavior look like if you might fear not being in control? What would a behavior be that you're trying to establish control? What would it look like?
Could be like with Elena screaming and crying and making threats.
Am I in control?
You're trying to be.
I, even as far as controlling my body, if I kill myself, who's in control? Is that the healthy way to deal with that? But if it's what I practice, if it becomes my habit, if I'm feeling this way, that's my go-to. It provides me some benefit. Dad'll stop talking to me in the way that's making me feel whatever she's feeling, out of control.
And I actually talked to or told her that last week, and it wasn't about.
That's a drug of choice.
Because she was kept on making mistakes. She was making mistakes, and I told her there's one thing to make a mistake, and then you learn from the mistake. But if you keep repeating the mistake, it then becomes habit.
Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, if you're talking to someone and they're in the midst of using their drugs of choice, how effective is that?
You're not getting victory.
It's just like the addiction. If I've just ingested this drug of choice, how effective are you going to be in talking logic to me? If you see someone behaving from their ego, what are they doing? What are they doing? What is it covering up?
The underlying cause.
Fear, guilt, insecurity, or a combination. All boils down to that. And all of that boils down to fear. But fear, guilt, or insecurity. If you see someone behaving in a way that doesn't seem loving, what is that an indicator of?
That they've had to deal with it before.
Fear, guilt, or insecurity is being covered up. When you respond in a way that's not loving, what is that an indication of?
Fear, guilt.
Fear, guilt, or insecurity. When we begin to operate from that place, we are in a mode that's just like addiction. Once you get wound up, if you and Adam are having intense fellowship, how logical is your thinking? Now, when you settle down and calm down, you can have a logical conversation. With Elena, you can have a logical conversation with her, different date, different time. But when she's reaching for her drug of choice, how effective is it for you to have a logical, rational conversation with her?
You try to say anything to her, it gets worse.
Makes it worse. They're already triggered. They've already reached for the drug of choice and ingested it. Already done it. So part of that is about understanding first how trauma works, what it looks like, but also understanding what it looks like for you and when you see it. Because part of this is once I began to understand, wait, if Osho said on a video I saw 20 years ago that stuck, when you are responding in love to someone, giving love, if they do not respond in love, something's wrong with them. The natural response to love is supposed to be love. You smile at a baby, what do? The natural reaction to love is supposed to be love. If you are giving love to someone, now, that's the first step of qualifying it. Did I act in love? Because if I'm acting out of ego, I'm acting through my fear, guilt, and insecurity. Am I giving love? No. I'm filtering it through the poison of my life. If I'm giving love and you don't respond in a loving way, something wrong with me? Check myself. Something's wrong with you. Dad's trying to help her. That's a loving thing. Did Dad give love through every interaction with her, or did Dad give ego? Ego always fuels ego. One can of gas. If I pour my gas into this situation and you do the same, does the fire get bigger or smaller? Bigger. The first realization about trauma then gave me fuel to say, wait a minute. Now, if trauma happens whenever my values are conflicted, can I do anything about your behavior? Can I control another person's behavior? Very challenging, unless you got real brute force. But there's one person whose behavior I can control. Mm-hmm. And so we start this saying, you have control over your behavior. Suggestions over other people's behavior, but absolute control over yours. Who's the first person you can influence in the traumatizing behavior? Who can you stop from traumatizing you? Yourself. And we usually start, and this is where we'll start this month, as you begin to learn how to use this tool. You'll first start this week, like your homework will be, notice every time you lie to yourself. Thought or action. Just start noticing it. This is no judgment. I'm not trying to change anything. This is just about awareness. As you go through this route, anytime you begin to think or say something that you know in your heart of hearts is untrue, I want you just to pay attention to that. Because part of this is, if lying in your value scheme is something that's not a good thing, how do I value lying? No. There should not be a need to lie. We shouldn't lie. We should be able to. I value being honest. If that is your value, anytime you violate your value, what are you creating? Another layer.
That definitely makes sense, 'cause with the thing with Elena last night, it hurt me hearing her talking like that. But then I started, it's my fault. I caused this. I'm a bad mom. And then I started crying.
Mm-hmm. Which part of that was true? Which part of that was not true? Did you start it? Did you cause the situation? Did you have anything to do with the situation? Does her crying mean you're a bad mom? Do your children, if your children cry, are you responsible in some way, or is there some shortcoming on your part? Are children entitled to cry when they want to cry? If they don't get their way, is crying not appropriate? How many lies did you tell yourself? And so when we start talking about healing, we have two inputs. Can you do anything about things that have happened in the past? Nope. Nothing. It's already done. So there's healing for things that are already done. But the other input is, well, doggone it, stop doing stuff that you're going to have to then add to your list of stuff you've got to heal. If I can stop adding trauma, then maybe I got the energy to work on some of the other stuff to clean out some of those areas. And we start with the person that you have control over. Did anyone else say those things to you yesterday? Now, they may be rooted in some things and some ideas and some behaviors from the past, but yesterday in your house, was there any abuser in your house abusing you verbally? No. And so as we begin to walk through these steps, the first part of it is something's got to give. If I'm healing, but I'm adding more layers faster than I can heal, is there a win gonna happen? And so we start there. There's a whole lot of science and a whole lot of research that he's done. But he says, I've got a framework that if we give people a framework for thinking, if you understand how trauma really works, and you understand how we can undo that damage through our thinking, then we've got a fighting chance. Now, the other part of this that for me has been interesting is that as I began to understand through my own lens, me, as I begin to heal those areas so they don't trigger me in the same ways, but as I begin to understand this, I'm able to understand others better. If I understand that every time I see this, even in my children or in my spouse, if the behavior does not reflect love, what is it? Love, ego. And if I see ego, what does that tell me? Something's wrong. What are the categories of something that's wrong? Fear, guilt, insecurity. If it's not love, it's going to boil down to one of these. When you begin to see the behavior, this tool begins to let you look a little bit deeper into what's happening with people if you're looking for the right things. Now, if you get triggered by it and you internalize it, I'm a bad mom, I'm this, I'm that, I'm judgment. And you'll inflict that damage onto you. But if you're looking at it for information, she's not responding to her dad's help in love. Let me listen to what I'm hearing. Oh, she's kicking back against being in control of herself. She's not feeling in control of herself. That's insecurity. I wonder what happened that's causing her to feel insecurity in this moment. Let me just listen a little closer. Oh, Dad's rushing her. She's feeling the stress. She may not be as proficient in this area, so now she's feeling insecure about the learning, and he's rushing her. She's not moving fast enough, and now she has a breakdown. Oh, wait, but I hear Dad say something. Oh, he threatened her. In a dad kind of way. She's not going to have his time. Oh, she's not going to have his attention. Oh, my dad's not going to be proud of me. Fear. And let me see, what's her behavior? Oh, she immediately goes to control. That didn't work. So she goes to her next line of defense that she knows will get a reaction and a rise. I'm stupid. Because what does that give her? Does someone feed her ego when she says that? No, you're not. If she's not feeling secure about who she is, she's needing affirmation. I'll kill myself. And then what do you guys give her? The affirmation. You're not okay. You are important. Because as children and adults, sometimes we haven't learned how to say what we mean and speak up when we have needs, especially emotional needs. We're told things like, sit down and shut up. You shouldn't feel that way. Why would you feel that way? Or, if as a parent, my insecurities are triggered, that's not true. I do love you. I am a good mom. In whatever ways you express that. So part of it is looking at, I have control over the amount of trauma in my life, the new trauma. But it requires me to be aware of what's happening around me. And what if you don't know how to do that? And so this framework gives you a format that helps you to avoid the things in life, especially around uncomfortable situations that traumatize us. I had a situation last week and I was speaking with someone. We were talking about something that was happening in their life. And I said, your actions didn't seem to line up with the priorities that you said were important. What are your values? And you didn't do what your values said. She wanted to have a conversation, and I said no. But I want to explain. No. And finally, I very forcefully said, I'm not going to listen to that. Let me explain to you why. Based on my understanding of trauma, if you have this conversation with me, you're going to create more trauma around this situation. You're going to talk about this situation in a way that's going to create more trauma. How about if you will suspend having the conversation you want to have and let's go through the steps. And then, after we go through the steps, if any of that conversation is relevant, we'll have that conversation. And we went through the steps. And we got to the end, and I said, now is any of that relevant? And she said, no. I said, part of it would have been you justifying your situation, which would have been lies. And if you tell yourself lies, what are you doing?
Traumatizing yourself.
So even sometimes the way we talk about what's going on, if we don't understand, it's not because we're trying to, we just don't understand. And we go for what feels good, but what feels good when we've got damaged areas is ego feeding behavior. It's our drug. And so we talk about it. And don't we feel better? Because we've taken a hit of the drug that soothes those feelings, but it doesn't resolve it. And so the next time something happens, now we got to go through all of that again. And it's cumulative. It's another layer. It's another layer. It's another layer. And the more you practice it, the better you get at it.
And would that be the same as, say, someone that was abused years and years ago, but then anytime anything happens, they keep bringing that incident up?
If the conversation takes it, where the conversation, the things that you are saying, violate your values. I'm going to do da 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 da, so should happen to this person. Well, do you think, and usually something drastic, they should die, somebody should off them. So do you believe that that behavior is okay? Well, for this person, no, for you. No. Then wishing it on someone else creates trauma for you. For you. You're wishing ill on someone else and damaging yourself to do it. In a logical mind, does that make sense? I'm going to damage myself because I'm mad at you. Logically, does that make sense? Sound like somebody addicted? So, Lena, because your dad's trying to help you learn your math so that, you could be an adult because you're going to need math and you want to get good grades because that makes you feel good. And so killing yourself would then make this situation better? So speaking negatively about yourself would make this situation better? Does that logically make sense? In the midst of that addictive process, the addiction process that trauma mimics, out of our mind. It's not logical. In the middle of an argument. So if I yell at you, that's going to make you more receptive to hear what I have to say, right? Yeah, right? Isn't that logic? No. When you're in your right mind, though, yelling at me doesn't make me want to hear you anymore. And so I don't know what I was thinking, that yelling at you was going to make you more receptive to hear what I had to say, like logically. But when does that happen? When you're in your right mind, or at least closer to your right mind. In the midst of that, if you see the behavior, if you use it as a tool, what is it telling me? Is now the time? Nope, you may have to do behavior modification now. But what is it giving you? It's giving you information if you'll listen. Let me listen to what she's saying, because I need to go figure out what happened before the meltdown. But I hear her, oh, there's some insecurity there. I'm nothing. I'm worthless. I'm not important. I'm not wanted. That's insecurity. She's not feeling secure right now. She's not feeling important right now. Okay. Now, how do I deal with that information? Because if you had done that thought, does that make you think you're not a bad mother? You're not a good mother? If that was your realization, she's not feeling real secure right now. How does that affect you when you hear that?
That if I would have thought that, I wouldn't have started feeling like I was a bad mom.
So the very way we think swirls us into those addiction patterns. And what this process does is, while you are healing, while you have the potential of getting swung into those addictive patterns, that part of this process is about reminding yourself, wait a minute, I have an alternative process for thinking through things that's going to help me get to healing and not add layers of trauma. But it's a habit too. It's a habit. That's why this first week, just watching for your habit of telling yourself lies. You're not going to do anything with that information. You're not going to beat yourself up. This is just about observation. See, this process doesn't require you to do. Just try not to do it unless you're doing damaging behavior that's going to put your life at risk and those kind of things. This is not stop trying to do stuff. Nope. This is just observation. Because what happens is, if you suspend the judgment and use the tools, it helps you get to the resolution and heal that area so that you're then not traumatized by that. Now, there may be another layer that's now exposed, and that may be a trigger for something else. But if every time you recognize the negative emotions, that triggering, as you begin to see it more and more, if you begin practicing, okay, what do I do? My thinking is, I want to go there. I want to go there. I'm this, I'm that, and da-da-da. Wait a minute. But in the process, I could throw a lie up in there, and I could become the traumatizer. So, yep, this is one of those situations where my go-to is going to damage me. I got a process to go. Let me try thinking this through in a different way, in a way that's going to heal me, and see if I can get to a resolution so that I'm not adding more layers on. And so part of this is these tools work better the more you use them. So with that being said, I'm going to talk about the steps of that, and then I'm going to talk about how we're going to use that with your family court. As you saw in the video, the first part that people have problems with is the facts. We had a little bit of exposure with this at the lake and the class that we did here at the church. That's usually where judgment starts, analysis starts. In the lady that I was working with, want to give a justification for why you didn't do the thing that you said, the lines you, yeah. That's what actually happened. What actually happened. Elena was working on her homework. Adam offered to help her. Adam said, I'll help her with her homework. I said, okay. The next thing I hear is raised voices. And this happened, and this happened, and this happened. No analysis, not why it happened, not what other people are thinking. This is not where you read their mind. It's just what happened. And then giving time to process. What am I feeling? What am I feeling? I feel some kind of way. That's an emotional intelligence that's very low. I feel something. I know I'm feeling something. It's not pleasant, but I can't even put any words to what I'm feeling. And the reality is sometimes we're in that state. I'm feeling something. Don't feel good. That's all I know right now. Too angry to know. Oh, wait, there's an emotion. Angry. What else do you feel? Okay. In the situation yesterday, what were the emotions you were feeling?
Angry was definitely one.
What else? What's the emotion that makes you feel like you're not a good mother? What's that emotion?
Heartbreak.
Heartbreak, more sadness.
Sadness.
What else? Incompetent. I don't feel like I'm being a competent mother. Inadequate. I didn't do enough. I should have done something. I should have had a solution for whatever. What else were you feeling?
I didn't realize it until this morning or until later on, but it exhausted me.
I felt exhausted. What else?
Just done with it. Wanted to go just curl up in a corner.
Exasperated. Done. Overwhelmed.
Yep.
All kinds of emotions. This is the part, though, where you have control. You can say, today, I can't do nothing but just the surface stuff. Now, part of this is just like weeds, though. Getting some of them out is good. Getting all of them out is better. But sometimes you can just get the top layers off. You get to choose. How deep into this hole do you want to clear out this stuff? And every single incident that comes up gives you an opportunity to choose. There's no right, there's no wrong. It's about choice. Those layers that don't get out now, sure enough, they're going to show up later. They're going to show up. And maybe you will have gotten some other layers off so you can go deeper and deeper. This process gives you that control of the process of the depth. The more you challenge it, and the workbook that I'll give